Okay, so this Kevin Garnett jersey is way too small on me, but I'm gonna keep rocking with the jersey things in these videos. So I'm a little bit worried about the Boston Celtics and the offseason they just had. A lot of people are really high on the Kevin or on the Kristaps Porzingis trade, and but I think the Grant Williams trade was a total disaster, and I think they completely flubbed that situation. And I really don't feel that great about the moves they made this offseason. So yeah, let's talk about it. So the Celtics basically started off this offseason by obviously trading Marcus Smart. And initially, when it was supposed to be Malcolm Brogdon in the deal, I really liked that because Malcolm Brogdon, though he's one of the best bench players on this, probably the best bench player on this team, and was like a sixth man of the year candidate. He's hurt a lot, and that's something people haven't really like fully recognized yet. Like Malcolm Brogdon is always injured. And that's actually, and I mean, it's pretty obvious, that's why the deal fell through because of like the foot injury, or is it the elbow, or it's one of those two. It's his foot or his elbow. So Malcolm Brogdon is always hurt. So I think losing him after you basically acquired him last year for nothing, and then getting Kristaps Porzingis would have been elite. I think that would have improved the depth. I think that would have, if not like that would have probably actually improved their depth because they would have had centers. And they have plenty of guards. But I think now that it's Marcus in the deal, and yeah, they got 2 first-round picks on top of it. But I think, like, when you trade Marcus Smart away, they are fundamentally changing the identity of their team. And I think one of the biggest issues with this team now is they don't really have a vocal leader. Like, I don't really know if you guys watch a lot of Celtics games, you might notice that, like, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they have a really weird dynamic because, like, A, they don't play off each other well, but B, they don't really seem to have, like, elite, like, even off-the-court chemistry. I feel like Marcus Smart kind of gelled that whole team together. Like, he sort of was, like, the face of the Boston Celtics locker room. Marcus Smart was, like, their mascot. They don't really have a guy, and I use this word a lot in the last video. I'm also going to take this from... I'm gonna steal from Tim Bontemps here, but they don't like. He was kind of like a galvanizer. He was kind of the guy who could kind of rally that team together. And Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have never really been able to do that. Jason Tatum's more of a quiet. He'll kind of go out there and he'll get his 30 and he'll play good defense and he'll rebound and he'll play make a little bit, but he's not really like a natural leader. And then Jaylen Brown dribbles off his foot too much to be a leader for this team. And I think there's just been way too much uncertainty with him for him to be a leader for this team. So they don't really have that anymore. And then Kristaps Porzingis is also not a leader. And so I guess you kind of turn to Al Horford, who's like 37 now. He's really starting to decline a little bit, though he still locks the hell out of Joel Embiid. And you start to kind of worry about the chemistry of this team. And then if we go to the on-court stuff, I mean, this team, which was already kind of poor, like in the playmaking department. They didn't really have an elite primary playmaker in the first place. Jaylen Brown is like a neutral assist to turnover guy, and Jason Tatum's a good playmaker, but he's probably overrated at this point. People think he's going to be like a 7 assist guy, but he's really probably in that 4 to 5 range tops. And they lost their best playmaker, who wasn't elite in the first place, but he was pretty good. And though he was inconsistent, sometimes he made plays that kind of sort of gelled this team, the Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum pick and rolls, the driving kicks, the playmaking in transition. Marcus Smart's a pretty good passer in transition, I would say. And now they don't have that. And then if we look at their big man rotation, I think there is an avenue for them to play Robert Williams and Kristaps Porzingis together. My problem with it, though, is Kristaps Porzingis is a little bit of, he's kind of a guns a-blazing kind of player where he's not trying to... He doesn't really play super well within the flow of the offense all the time. Sometimes he just wants to catch the ball at the top of the key and just fire it away. But I really think this Celtics offense is thriving when they have a lot of off-ball movement, when they're setting screens, when they're, using Robert Williams as a playmaker, when they're looking for alley-oops, when they're trying to find open threes. And I think Marcus Smart was kind of like the engine to a lot of those plays, and they don't really have it anymore. Now, Derek White is probably one of the best Marcus Smart replacements in the league. But I'm not sure. Derek White, like, there's a stark difference in the like mentality of Derek White and Marcus Smart. Like, if you look at, like, if I were to describe those two players to you in a vacuum, like, Derek White is like a 6'4", solid playmaker, not a great shooter, not an elite creator, but he can kind of finish at the rim a little bit. He's kind of strong, not the most athletic guy, but he can really defend. And then I would kind of describe Marcus Smart in almost the same way. You know, maybe he's a little bit better of a playmaker, and he's definitely a better defender. But the difference is, like, Marcus Smart, Marcus Smart is a motherfucker on defense. Like, Marcus Smart will get in your grill, and he'll fight, and he'll scrape, and he'll claw to kind of, for, like, loose balls and against the team's best player, and he's a hard-nosed player. I feel like Derek White is just a very good defender, and there's nothing wrong with Derek White, by the way. There's nothing wrong with the fact that he isn't, like, a crazy person like Marcus Smart or Patrick Beverley. But all I'm saying is the Celtics, who already seem to be, like, a mentally weak team, they've always tended to let games just, like, kind of slip away from them. They kind of play with their food a lot, and they kind of take it easy on teams that should be worse than them. Like, they kind of just let, like, over and over again in the Miami series, and I'm not trying to discredit Miami here, but I really feel like Boston just took their foot off the gas way too often. And this problem kind of circles back to the two Jays, who kind of just sort of are kind of lazy sometimes. And again, they don't really play off each other that well, so they kind of have to resort to taking and making hard shots. And they're good at those, and Jason Tatum's become very good at getting to the rim, and he's very difficult to stop when he gets to the rim. But it's kind of an issue when you can't really ever get easy offense going. And they haven't really I think they've taken a step back in terms of the floor of this team. I think it's going to be much harder for them to sort of get over the hump in a playoff series, because they don't have, like, I think their consistency is even more limited. Now, what I think the glass half full Celtics fans will say that this trade has kind of improved their ceiling, because Kristaps Porzingis is a better player than Marcus Smart, and I think the difference is actually almost negligible. It's maybe like a 5 to 10% difference, but he's definitely a better player than Marcus Smart, and he's an elite 3-point shooter, on and off. He's pretty damn good. His percentages the last few years, I think, have been pretty damn good. But I just think when you lose the vocal leader of your team, and when you lose arguably your second best defender, because I don't really think it should be a competition between him and Robert Williams, who was the best defender on the Celtics. It was Rob Williams. I don't think Kristaps and Time Lord's going to be like an easy, like a seamless fit. It's not a hand-in-glove fit at all. Porzingis is an okay playmaker, and Robert Williams is occasionally a pretty good one, but Porzingis isn't really a lob threat, and he's not really the type of player to make, those passes to Porzingis. So I don't think they're going to play off each other that well. I think Porzingis just kind of end up being like a spot-up guy a lot of the times when Rob Will is on the floor, because I think if you try to use Porzingis as like a true big man, which he's never been inclined to do, he doesn't like getting post-ups, then you're kind of limiting Robert Williams, and you're kind of clogging up the spacing, and it's just worse. And then you put him in the corner, and that's fine. So you just stagger their minutes, I guess, and you maybe play Al Horford off the bench, and you kind of run the three big staggered. And then the other thing that they've lost, though, is they can't run small ball with Grant Williams anymore, because they don't have Grant Williams anymore. And they lost him for essentially nothing. I will never understand why Joe Mazzulla didn't play Grant Williams. He was one of the best. He was a proven like playoff rotation player who basically like couldn't crack the rotation once Joe Mazzulla became the head coach. And that'll never make sense to me. Grant Williams is an elite defender. Well, maybe not elite, but he's a very good defender. He's a good 3-point shooter. People forgot how nice he was in the 2022 finals run. He was a fantastic shooter that year. But like I guess Mazzulla just didn't like him. That'll never make sense to me. And we'll talk about Dallas probably next week. I'm sort of waiting for them to make the Tim Hardaway trade, but spoiler alert, I loved Dallas's offseason, and Grant Williams is a huge part of that. But I think what Boston has kind of done this year is they've taken a massive gamble on the fit of Kristaps Porzingis, and they've sort of sacrificed a great deal of their identity. And Boston is kind of like the Celtics are kind of assholes, you know? Like every time they have a player who you want to root for, every time they have someone that the city embraces, you know, you think of Isaiah Thomas or like Kyrie. Well, I mean, I guess the Kyrie thing is different, but like I guess really Isaiah Thomas is the only example I can kind of come up with now. Like they're kind of like the soulless entity who will kind of do anything to if it means getting more talent. And so I think this move is, if not questionable. Though getting 2 first-round picks, like they got way more value than they should have for Marcus Smart. They got like Porzingis and 2 firsts. That's insane. And yeah, they turned one of the firsts into like 45 seconds or whatever it was. I don't really understand why the Celtics. I don't understand. This is another thing. The Celtics are like acquiring all these second-round picks to make a big trade. I'm not really sure like what that trade's gonna be. Since if they're gonna re-sign Jaylen Brown, they're kind of in trouble with their cap flexibility anyway, especially with Porzingis now on the roster. But yeah, I'm not loving this move for Boston, and I don't know. Damn, rip Marcus Smart.